Stop for a second, because what happened today isn't speculation, and it isn't commentary. This is a confirmed internal collapse that began quietly and detonated fast. Early this morning, just before 8 a.m., a small group of senior Republican senators entered Mitch McConnell's office for what appeared to be a routine leadership discussion. Less than an hour later, they walked out knowing the Republican Party might never be the same. Within 2 hours, Washington was in open turmoil. This wasn't about legislation or ideology. This was about power and a growing realization inside the GOP that Donald Trump had become impossible to control. What set this off was something most Americans still haven't heard. And once you understand it, you'll see why the next 3 days could decide whether the Republican Party holds together or fractures beyond repair. Here's what has not yet been fully reported, but has been confirmed independently through multiple Senate offices. In the early hours of Wednesday morning, just after 2 a.m., Donald Trump placed a direct call to the Senate Majority Leader. His demand was blunt and immediate: advance a sweeping emergency powers bill without delay. He issued a threat alongside it. If the vote didn't happen by the end of the week, he would personally back primary challengers against sitting Republican senators in their own states. He made it clear he was prepared to campaign against them publicly. Just a few hours later, leaked audio began circulating privately among Senate leadership. In that recording, Trump is heard dismissing the Senate entirely, stating that lawmakers answer to him, not the Constitution. Instead of fear, the reaction inside leadership circles was rage. That audio became the tipping point. By 7:43 a.m., an emergency meeting was called behind closed doors. Mitch McConnell, John Thune, John Barrasso, and John Cornyn sat together in silence as the recording was played. Twice. No one spoke at first. According to one person briefed on the meeting, the room went completely still, because everyone present understood what they were hearing. This wasn't frustration. This was a declaration that the legislative branch no longer mattered. To understand why this moment matters, you need to understand how Trump has controlled Senate Republicans for nearly a decade. It has never been about shared policy goals. It has been about intimidation. Careers have been destroyed as warnings. Mitt Romney, Bill Cassidy, Liz Cheney. Each time, the message was reinforced: defiance leads to isolation, humiliation, and political death. Loyalty, however, never guaranteed protection, it only postponed punishment. But something shifted this week. Fear stopped working. 3 forces converged at once. First, the electoral reality changed. The upcoming Senate map is brutal for Republicans. Polling from multiple swing states now shows that direct alignment with Trump is costing candidates between 6 and 8 points. Several senators privately admitted they could defend conservative principles, but not chaos. Second, Trump's recent foreign policy rhetoric triggered alarm inside national security circles. Threats involving allied territory weren't viewed as bluster, they were viewed as destabilizing. Members of the Armed Services Committee were furious. One former military commander described the situation as reckless, not strategic. Third, the legal pressure escalated. Multiple criminal cases are accelerating. Appeals are failing. Trial dates are solidifying. Privately, Republican attorneys began asking the unthinkable question: what happens if the party nominates someone who may be in custody during the campaign? Inside that closed-door meeting, the discussion turned decisive. John Thune broke the silence first, saying the party could no longer defend what voters themselves couldn't rationalize. Barrasso pushed back, warning that public resistance would trigger retaliation. Everyone in the room knew that was true. Then McConnell leaned forward and said something that changed the trajectory of the party: Trump would destroy them regardless. The only remaining choice was whether they went down protecting him or protecting the Senate itself. That's when a plan was laid out. It wasn't symbolic. It was structural. Leadership would refuse to advance emergency powers legislation. They would distance themselves publicly from Trump's foreign policy rhetoric. And if he launched primaries against incumbents, leadership would fully back sitting senators with institutional funding. McConnell asked for a commitment right then. Thune agreed immediately. Cornyn followed. Barrasso hesitated. Then, after a long pause, he agreed as well. 4 senior Republicans. 1 decision. And the foundation cracked. Within hours, McConnell personally contacted other senators. Some commitments were expected. Others were not. When Lindsey Graham quietly aligned with the effort, it sent shockwaves through the party. This was Trump's loudest defender, and he was done. According to one source, Graham told colleagues he would not defend threats against allied nations or attacks on constitutional authority. By late morning, a formal letter was drafted, 5 pages long, written in constitutional language, asserting that the Senate would not enable conduct that undermines democratic order. Signatures began stacking quickly. Trump found out before noon. His reaction was immediate and explosive. He called allies. He issued threats. He attempted to reach McConnell, who refused to answer. Within hours, the divide became visible to the public. House Republicans rushed to defend Trump. Senate leadership went silent. Reporters noticed immediately. That silence was intentional. By mid-afternoon, the letter was leaked deliberately. Once published, there was no walking it back. This was no longer internal disagreement. It was open rebellion. What followed was just as important. Senate leadership had already prepared contingency plans. If Trump attacked publicly, more senators would step forward. If he launched primaries, leadership would financially defend incumbents. And if escalation continued, a bipartisan effort to limit executive emergency powers would move forward. Democrats, watching closely, made a strategic decision of their own. Instead of exploiting the chaos, they stayed quiet, offering private support without public celebration. That choice denied Trump the enemy he needed to unify his party. By evening, Trump's response turned frantic. Dozens of social media posts. Public insults. Primary threats. Conservative media fractured in real time. Donors issued carefully worded statements supporting institutional stability, signaling where their money would go. By nightfall, 17 Republican senators were aligned against Trump's demand. Internal polling leaked the next morning showed devastating numbers. Candidates tied to Trump were collapsing in swing states. Staffers inside Senate offices circulated their own letters, threatening resignation if leadership backed down. International allies began issuing statements expressing alarm. At that point, the reality was unavoidable. Trump was facing pressure from every direction: senators, donors, staff, allies, and foreign governments. This wasn't a single conflict. It was encirclement. And when faced with that, Trump chose escalation. He announced rallies. He declared war on traitors. He mobilized loyalists. He threatened protests. Security was elevated. But behind the scenes, the math was already done. Senate leadership quietly secured bipartisan support. The votes existed. Trump had lost the leverage he once relied on. This is not about one bill. This is about the collapse of a fear-based system of control. For the first time, Senate Republicans concluded that loyalty to Trump endangered their survival more than defying him. What happens next is uncertain. He may retreat. He may escalate further. The split may freeze, or it may rupture entirely. But one thing is already clear. Donald Trump demanded total authority. And for the first time, the Senate said no.